Attorney Hugo Holland is here. Hey, Mr. Hugo, welcome to Keel. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. How are you?
Before we begin, I had said, and I was making notes, and I jotted down, let's see, Hugo Holland, former assistant Caddo DA, and Aaron, she said, oh, hold on, that's not right. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, he still is kind of like he's kind of like I don't want to say hired gun, but you do a lot of work for a lot of different DAs, parishes. Explain to everybody what you're doing now. Sort of give us your bona fides here.
I work part-time for about 8 or 10 different DAs around the state, from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to the Arkansas line. And I handle, whatever cases they assign to me, but quite a few of the cases are high-profile murder-type cases, quite a few first-degree murder cases.
It's funny to me that you would describe, yes, I work a little part-time. Well,
well, okay, I work a lot part-time. Yeah. That's what I do.
We had a story yesterday. We discussed it again this morning. The fellow's name is State Rep Kyle Green from Marrero. And he is anti-death penalty, and one of the arguments he made in legislation that he is going to introduce in Baton Rouge is that one of the reasons we should do away with the death penalty is because it's too expensive. It's more expensive than, I guess, keeping people in prison for life. What do you think about that? What is your initial reaction to that statement?
I find it richly ironic that the people that are opposed to the death penalty say one of the reasons that we shouldn't have it is because it's expensive. And they're the ones that make it expensive. They're the ones that cause the delays. They are the ones that prohibit the Department of Corrections from being able to get the drug cocktail required for executions. That's richly ironic. And I would also add this. It's expensive. But keeping people in prison is expensive. I mean, if we're worried about saving money, I told this to Aaron yesterday, why don't we just do away with the Department of Corrections overall?
So
I mean, that's a ridiculous idea, but if you're worried about expense, one of the fundamental things that government is supposed to do is provide a justice system, a large measure of which is retributive justice, so that we don't have victims going out seeking justice on their own.
But
so
Hugo, there will be people that say the death penalty doesn't deter people from committing murder. They will say that.
I don't care if it does. I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it makes any difference if it does or not. I've seen studies that it does. I've seen studies that it doesn't. Let me bring up again, retributive justice. There are some people that are so vicious, so evil, that they don't deserve to live in our society, including our prison society. And before any of the anti-death penalty people pipe in and say, well, if we keep them in prison, they can't hurt anybody. That's not true either. You go ask the district attorney down in East Feliciana Parish, where Angola is located. There are prisoners that hurt and kill each other all the time. And it's not just other prisoners that are in prison. So, I'm not just going to tell you this is theoretical. This has happened. There's a correctional officer named David Knaps who is no longer alive because 6 lifers, 6 people who very well could have received and should have received a death penalty, attempted to escape and murdered a correctional officer.
So the point I had made yesterday that the expense, as it were, isn't because we execute people, it's because we don't. Sort of my theory was kind of right in that regard, huh?
I would say that you're about... Yes, I would say that you're correct. Now, we don't have enough time for me to explain how the anti-death penalty crowd are the ones that make it take so long and make it so expensive, but it's just ironic that they're saying that we shouldn't do it because it's expensive, and they're the ones that make it that way.
We had gotten an email yesterday from a listener, a psychologist, if memory serves. Aaron has that in front. Go ahead. You can sum it up.
Yeah, this is from who's talking about the cost, and it takes longer in the court system. It costs more. And he also pointed to the folks that were exonerated after. Talk about that.
Word. I love that word. I don't believe that there's anybody that's been exonerated. Now, if you ask a criminal defense lawyer what the word exonerated means, that means that there's some new evidence that comes up that has allowed a person to be released. Let's just take the guy, I think his name was, Glenn Ford, that was on death row from Caddo for so many years?
You bet.
And criminal defense lawyers say he's been exonerated. We could have executed an innocent man. That's a bunch of horse hockey. He was not exonerated because he is innocent. Exonerated is not the right word to use with him. There was evidence that came up that while the DA thought he was the trigger man, there was somebody else that was the trigger man, which means that at the least Glenn Ford was guilty of second-degree murder, but still could have been guilty of first-degree murder. And here's the proof in the pudding for all the people that yap on about Glenn Ford being exonerated. There is a statute in Louisiana that allows a prisoner who has been wrongfully incarcerated to sue the state and get money from the state for being wrongfully incarcerated. Do you know what it requires before you get that money?
You prove you're exonerated, yeah.
No, ma'am. It doesn't say exonerated. The prisoner has to prove that they were actually innocent of the crime charged or any variant of the crime charged. Glenn Ford filed a lawsuit against the state of Louisiana, probably for $1 million bazillion or something ridiculous like that, and he didn't get a penny. And do you know why he didn't get a penny? Because the evidence clearly was that he was guilty of second-degree murder of Isidore Roseman and perhaps first-degree murder. So when people go throwing that word exoneration around, they either are ignorant and don't know what it means, or they intentionally are trying to misrepresent the facts.
Death penalty cases take 6 times longer to resolve and cost triple the money. How do we solve that?
If I could wave a magic wand and make myself the legislature, most of the problem has to do with post-conviction relief. It's not the actual trial process. It's not the appeals process, although there are problems in both those processes. It's the post-conviction process. If I could wave a wand and create the laws that I wanted on post-conviction relief, I could fix it. Let me give you an example of why that's a problem, why it's so expensive. A gentleman named Darrell Robinson almost 20 years ago murdered 4 people in Alexandria, all at one time, one of whom was a 10-month-old infant that was shot in the face. The man is true evil, truly, truly evil. If there's anybody in our society that deserves a death penalty, it's Darrell Robinson. It has only been the last 18 months that we've actually had post-conviction relief hearings in Darrell Robinson's case in Rapides Parish. Why is that, you ask? Mm-hmm. Well, because the law allows post-conviction anti-death penalty lawyers to file what's called a shell petition. In other words, they just file a petition saying Darrell Robinson's entitled to post-conviction relief, and yet they drag their investigation on for a decade or more, hoping perhaps that witnesses that I need to prove their shell petition incorrect will die, move away, change their stories. So that's one of the main reasons that it takes so long.
So it's not so much that these mandatory appeals are codified as much as it is that lawyers, are you saying that defense lawyers are sort of gaming the system to draw it out also?
Oh, that is precisely what they are doing. And what's even more obscene about it is that it's state money that's going to do that. The Public Defender Board in the state of Louisiana receives about $30 million a year. Most of that money is supposed to go to assist local public defenders like the Caddo Public Defender and the Bossier Parish Public Defender, because sometimes they just don't have enough money to discharge their duties. What the State Public Defender Board for years has done is of that $30-something million they get from the state legislature, they carve off nearly a third of it, or $10 million. And that $10 million goes to 5 boutique law firms in the state of Louisiana. Those 5 boutique law firms are the law firms that discharge the state's obligation to represent people charged with capital crimes. So again, 1/3 of the state budget goes for less than 0.5% of the people charged with crimes in the state. And it's those lawyers at those boutique law firms who have limited themselves for 2 or 3 cases a year that are dragging these things out. Each of those boutique law firms, by the way, has a contract in excess of $1 million a year with the state.
Wow. Okay, Hugo, one more. There's people hollering at the radio, and I'm going to ask the question they want to ask.
If they are, they're on his side.
I'm going to ask the question they want asked. The commandment says thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill good guys. How do you respond to that?
I really don't know what sort of mistranslation you've got there. I think that if I'm correct, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and so you'd have to ask a Hebrew scholar exactly what it said. I can tell you that I went to Jesuit high school, and there was a noted scholar named E.J. Jacquet that taught theology when I was there in the late 70s, who went on to translate for the Vatican, and he said that the Hebrew word was not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not do murder.
Oh.
Retributive justice. Retributive justice, that is visiting on the most evil of our society, what they visit on the most innocent of our society, is not murder.